this is the tutorial for the Space Spawner asset from by Media SHG. Okay, I'm gonna explain to you how the asset works and how to set it up. Okay, okay, so let's get started here. The uh, the first thing you have to do is to make sure that you have a level parent object in the scene. Okay, and the level parents tag has to be set to level. Okay, so under tags there has to be a level tag. Okay, so if there's not one, add it and set your tag to level. Okay, the Space Spawner prefab is found here under the main directory, and you just drag that onto the hierarchy as well. Okay, so now it should work. So if you press play now, you'll see that it generates a scene. Okay, okay, so I'm gonna show you what all this stuff does. Okay, the time between spawns is the time between the spawns of these objects here. So that is the time between the spawns of your objects that float around in space, like your satellites and your other spacecraft. Okay, the lowest time between spawns is used when you use the randomized time between spawns setting, uh, and that is the minimum interval that the script waits before the next object is spawned. Special time between spawns uh, is the interval at which the special objects are spawned. Uh, so that is 1 frame. So these are going to be spawned very often, the asteroids. Okay. Uh, Randomized time between spawns is just to spawn these assets at a random interval. To spawn these objects here at a random interval. The special object zmin is you don't really need to set that much. That is the z value of the asteroids, maximum and minimum z values of the asteroids. Uh, Generate static objects. Your static objects are your planets. Okay, so in order to generate your planets, generate static objects has to be ticked. Your planets are added here in this array of static objects. The minimum number of static objects is the minimum number of so the planets are also spawned randomly. The minimum number of static objects is the minimum number of objects that are going to be spawned. And the maximum number of static objects is the maximum number of static objects that are going to be spawned. So if you set those to equal, then the program is always going to spawn the value that you enter here. In this case, 1,500. So there's always going to be 1,500 planets in the scene. The special static objects are your satellites. In this case, okay, your satellites and your other spacecraft. So the minimum number of special static objects and the maximum number of special static objects is the range of the amount of objects that are going to be in the scene. So in this case they are equal, so there's always going to be 15 objects or 15 spacecraft and satellites in the scene. Your particle system, your particle objects are here, the size is 2. So the particle system is the one particle object, and the fireball, which is suns, is the other object. Okay? And these are also going to be generated randomly. Or there's going to be a random choice between these two. Okay? And there's always going to be 200 objects in the scene because you've set the minimum and the maximum number to 200. Okay? The particle system has been set up so that it auto-generates particles. It automatically generates particles. That's why there's only one object here in the particle, or one particle system object. So it's not really necessary to set that because it's set up by script. Disable renderer disables the boxes around the space spawner, so it makes it invisible. Your planets contain the add planet ring script, and the elements here in the script are your planet rings. So what happens when the planet instantiates itself, or when the planet gets instantiated, each planet randomly chooses whether to instantiate a ring or not, and each planet, if a planet must instantiate a ring, then it chooses which ring to instantiate, and the ring is added onto the planet. Resize object resizes the planet. The minimum, and this is, so every planet that gets generated is also resized. So the size of the planets are going to be between 100 and 750. The object rotator adjusts the position of the planet and then rotates it a little bit at the start. Okay, then it rotates it on the y-axis. So at the start it positions it randomly by rotating it on all the axes by a random amount, and then it rotates it for the rest of the duration of the program along the y-axis. The position transform script positions the planets at a maximum distance of between 0 and 8,000. So what this does, it means that it'll be visible by the main camera, because the main camera's clipping plane, the far clipping plane of the main camera, is 8,000. Okay. Your planet ring. Let me find a planet ring quick. Okay, your planet ring also has the resize object script, so that resizes the planet ring to fit around the planet, that's its parent, and all that is controlled by the planet ring script. Okay, so your objects that float, your satellites, uh, they don't really need the box collider. Oh no, actually they do, because like this gives the what happens is if one of these collides with a planet, then it wobbles around and then it then it looks like it crashes. But I made it so that it doesn't explode because it's more interesting when it wobbles. The rigid body, you always have to add a rigid body to a moving object. Uh, the space object floater script controls how the object moves in space. Okay, but in this case, the object, all these settings are set by the spawner. So you do not have to set any of these settings because they are set by script by the spawner. Thrust force, that is the force that is applied to the object in order to get it to move. Uh, if you set it to random thrust force, then it's gonna make this a random number. But it's better for our scene to have this at a fixed number, because if the force is set randomly, then it might be set too low, which means that the object will travel too slow and you will never see it, and then it'll just use up processing resources. But if you do decide to set the thrust randomly, then you can set the minimum and the maximum values, uh, or the minimum and maximum range of the thrust value. Rotate on start just rotates it so that the objects move in different directions. This script is used for debugging, and it just draws a line along the forward vector, and this script draws a line along the up vector of the object. Okay, these asteroids uh, they are set up slightly differently to the other objects, because they continuously rotate along all the axes. Okay, and they travel more slowly than the other objects. Oh no, sorry, they oh no, the thrust here has been set randomly, so they actually travel a lot faster than all the other objects, and they get destroyed when they collide with an object in the scene. And this resize object, when the object when the asteroid gets instantiated, its size is increased and set to this random size that gets generated here. Okay, so now I'm going to show you what the results of all these settings are. Okay, so let's play it. This is now the default settings. So that is what the scene looks like. So as you can see, there's not that many of these suns. There's a few, but there's not, that many. There's quite a lot of planets. Okay, there's lots of asteroids flying around. There are a few of these satellites flying around. And yeah, so now what we can do is let's see if we set the random time between spawns, the lowest random time between spawns, to a much higher value. We can set the time between spawns to like 500, and the lowest random time between spawns to 300. So now it's gonna take a lot longer for these spacecraft to spawn, and the satellites, you know, for the spacecraft and the satellites to spawn. Uh, your special objects uh, get spawned every frame, so you can leave that as it is for now. We're gonna generate the static objects, the special static objects, and we're gonna generate particles. Okay. So we're gonna generate everything here. Okay. Let's increase the number of planets that are generated to 4,000. And let's decrease the number of static objects to 5. And the number of particle objects to 50. So as you can see, there's a lot of planets now in the scene, and planet rings, and uh, but there's very few particle systems. There's a particle, there's a particle, there's a particle, but there's very few particle systems, and there's a lot of asteroids flying around, and there's also very few of the spacecraft flying around. Okay, so now let's change it so that there's fewer of these planets. So what we can do is, okay, let's firstly make it so that there's, okay, let's leave the number of spacecraft as it is, uh, and spawn fewer planets. So we set the number of planets to 200, and let's increase the number of particles that are spawned. So we make that 1,500. Actually, let's make it more, 3,000. So now you can see there's a lot of different stars in the scene. And you also have your other particles here, your other particle systems. And there's not that many planets. Okay. Now let's decrease the number of particle objects to 400, and the number of planets can remain at 200. And let's increase the number of spacecraft that we start with at the beginning. So let's increase that to 100. Oh, sorry, I clicked it. Let's increase that to 100. Okay. And let's also increase the rate at which those objects are spawned. So we decrease the interval to 50. Actually, let's make it even less, 25. So now we're going to have a lot of spacecraft flying around, but there's not going to be that many planets, and there's not going to be many particle systems. So as you can see, there's a lot of little spacecraft flying around here in the scene. And also your asteroids are flying around here. But there's not that many stars, and there's not that many planets. And that is how it works. So you can just play around here with the settings and set up your own environment however you like it. But depending on uh, the kind of device that you're creating your scene for, uh, it might be better to use fewer objects overall, but specifically reduce the number of uh, spacecraft and satellites in the scene, because these use up a lot of graphics processing resources. The asteroids don't really use up much, so you can have as many of those as you want. And when you have an excessive amount of planets, then it also uses up a fair bit of resources. But uh, that's only if you really have an excessive amount. But otherwise, they don't use up that many resources. The particle system also doesn't use that much resources, so and neither does the fireball. So you can have quite a lot of those, but still, just play around with it and see what your computer can handle. And yeah, so that makes it very simple for you to create a scene with a space atmosphere or environment. So then you don't have to use a skybox, but you can use a skybox as well. You just replace the skybox here on the main camera, but that's not really necessary. Thanks for watching the tutorial, and I hope you enjoy using this asset.